Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, Karina Kogan, a growth operator, brand architect, and executive who spent the last 2 decades scaling some of the most iconic consumer tech and media businesses in the world. She's currently the Chief Marketing and Growth Officer at Sundays for Dogs, where she's leading brand acquisition, e-commerce, and data just months into her new role. Before that, Karina has sat at the intersection of strategy, storytelling, and scale, driving growth at companies like Peloton, Aura, Napster, Warner Media, and Pvolve, while also advising and serving on boards across consumer wellness and technology. From subscription and DTC to omnichannel, franchising, and creator-led platforms, Karina has built and rebuilt brands through hypergrowth, market expansion, M&A, and restructuring, always tying business strategy back to brand clarity and measurable impact across revenue, profitability, loyalty, and lifetime value. In today's conversation, we unpack what high growth actually means, celebrity partnerships, intentional versus accidental brand moments, and how marketing leaders should really be thinking about AI in 2026 and beyond. If you want a masterclass in scaling brands without losing the plot, this one is for you. Karina, how are you?
Hi, I'm so good. That's a lot of things for you to say.
I didn't even breathe. I didn't take a breath that entire time. I hope it all got out. We want to make sure that we put the spotlight on our treasured guest. So hopefully we did a good job there. What was the accuracy rate? Did I have
It
any
was pretty good.
hallucinations?
It's pretty good. Yeah. You have a second career in writing bios.
This is where large language models will never win, because I had 0% lack of accuracy there. We got that all right. We fact checked it. We are good to go. So Karina, thanks again for spending some time with us.
Yeah.
You are based out of beautiful New York City?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually in New Jersey. Yeah.
Beautiful New Jersey?
Beautiful New Jersey.
Did you get hit? I know there were some winter storms over the last week or so. Did you get hit with a bunch of snow, or?
A lot of snow, a lot of shoveling that I didn't do, but my husband took care of.
You took care of that. I would not even know how to pick up a shovel. If I look to my right, I hate to tell you, this is like 75 degrees. I'm here in South Florida, so not to make it any worse already. I apologize.
We're in Chalice.
So let's get into it. You're the Chief Marketing and Growth Officer at Sundays for Dogs. Looks like you joined the company only a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Tell us about the company. What drew you to the organization in the first place?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I love being a user of brands that I work on, and my dogs love Sundays. And as a matter of fact, there was one day where, for a variety of reasons, I told my husband to just feed our little dog something else, and he said, she won't. She's obsessed with Sundays. I have 2 dogs. They both eat Sundays, and they won't go back. So it was, and I'll tell you, actually, it was because she had some tooth issues, and, I told him to feed her wet food, and she wouldn't eat it. She just wants Sundays. So, why I joined, I love high growth.
Can I take a step back real quick?
Yeah.
So it's spelled Sundays, Sundays, like the day.
Yeah,
But you're
Sundays
talking about,
for dogs. Possessive, Sundays for dogs.
but you're talking about like the ice cream treat?
No, I'm talking about dog food.
Dog food. Okay, my fault. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. No, ice cream sundaes are good too.
Okay, I was like, wow, this is you're giving your dogs Sundays all
I'm
the time. I
giving my
love that.
dogs a high caloric, high sugar. Yeah.
You got the chubbiest dogs in New Jersey. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
No, no, I don't. I actually have some of the healthiest dogs in New Jersey because I feed them Sundays for dog.
There you go.
But actually, it's a good point. The majority of dogs in the U.S. are actually overweight. So what we feed them is really important. And there's something like 90 million dogs in U.S. household. The TAM on the dog food category is massive. It's a lot of meal. when you think about the number of dogs in the US. So yeah, I joined Sundays for Dogs because one, I tested the product with my own pets and they love it. So I knew I was joining a company with a great product. I also love high growth, high scale, high impact opportunities. I love joining companies just as they clearly have, product market fit. But then the challenge is, how do you really scale this efficiently? How do you grow responsibly? How do you become a household name like a Peloton or Aura, which are brands I love working on? Um, but how do you do that at the right unit economics, at the right pace, with the right budgets? There's an art and science to it. It is a combination of, you know, um, refining the way you show up in market as a brand and your brand positioning, but there's also a fair amount of science behind how you spend your money and the performance marketing engine that gets behind it.
100%.
So it just was the right stage, the right product. And yeah, I'm stoked to be there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the amount of money that we spend on our pets. I have 2 dogs. I have 1 dog now. The amount of money we spend on our pets. A company named Chewy, by the way, is here locally that is really
Yeah.
growing exponentially over time. Um, because people want to take care of their animals. They want to make sure they give them best in breed. They want them to be healthy. These are, in fact, we're seeing declining birth rates in a lot of ways because people are, buying dogs and pets and animals, and we're seeing how important that is and how much people are willing to spend. And so I agree with you. The TAM is incredible there. Taking care of your dog, giving them long life, making them healthy, making sure what they eat is good and clean is a really, really important thing. So I totally get why you're drawn to that. What about marketing though? So like, were you like a little marketeer as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old girl, or is this something that you grew into over time?
I think what drew me to marketing is that I'm a communicator, and I also very much love to study culture. Mm, and I'm an observer of culture. But yeah, truthfully, when I was little, I did obsessively read magazines. I used to cut out ad campaigns that I loved. I had no idea that was called marketing or advertising, but I suppose I did have the itch early on. Um, when I got to college, because of the nature of my family, there were really only 2 things I could be, a doctor or a lawyer. And so I thought, okay, I'll be a lawyer. 'Cause I don't
Yeah.
want to deal with sick people.
You know,
And but very quickly learned that, there was a lot of similarities between the legal profession, weirdly, and marketing, which is the art of communication, and which is embedded in certainly in courtroom law, right? If you can, bringing an argument, right, in front of a jury is similar to
I mean, it's a
maybe.
form of marketing. You're telling
Yeah,
a story, you're telling your side of the story,
right,
you're giving a perspective, and 12 people are either gonna agree with it or they're not, right? So
yeah.
so that can be really important. It's funny you say that about, like, the marketing advertisements, and, like, how they resonated with you, and maybe because it was, like, publishing and it was, like, actual physical media, and so, like, to your point, magazine and magazine ads, like, I remember, like, them really resonating with me. I'll tell you, Absolute Vodka was, like, one of the best, like,
Oh my
marketing
god,
campaigns, like, when I was a
ever.
9-year-old, and I wasn't drinking, any vodka at 9 years old, obviously, but I was so excited to see those different ads and the different things that they did in print. So it's just to your point, like it's something that I don't think it's changed. It's obviously gone to a digital medium now instead. But yeah, I remember that being something as a kid that really, flipping Sports Illustrated and looking at the different ads and looking at the different my mom's magazines, my dad's magazines. Yeah, that's interesting. That's really. Do you remember what your first marketing output was? Like, did you put together like a vision board? Or did you put together like a lemonade stand flyer? Or like, do you remember?
No, but I did early on, and in high school, I interned at the original Spin magazine
Oh wow.
for the founder of Spin, a guy named Bob Guccione Jr. And that was, like, really inspiring to see how a magazine was put together, both editorially as well as the advertising. And like you, I was obsessed with the Absolute Vodka ads. I did never bought Victoria's Secret stuff, but I loved the catalog. I used to I was very into like remember the BMW films?
I do. Yep.
I don't know. But in college, I studied, my major was poli sci, but my senior thesis I wrote also on propaganda art and in totalitarian regimes. It sounds really boring, but if you study the art of totalitarian governments, propaganda is also a form of advertising.
100%.
So I don't know. I guess from very early on, I was drawn to how how different stories can be told, how people can be convinced of things. Um, yeah,
Yeah, you're
through
always drawn to
very
that.
yeah.
I So I love that. So now growth is a concept in marketing, relatively new to have a focus. Like we're always trying to grow the pie, grow the
Yeah.
brand, grow our consumers. But growth is a relatively new phenomenon in marketing. But that's your area of expertise. It's in your title. So how about for those who are maybe not as marketing experts or marketing centric as you are? Can you tell us a little bit about how you define high growth? And then I'm interested, once you've defined that for us, let's talk about when you go into organizations and they hire you because you're going to bring that. How do you build the team to subsequently drive that high growth?
That's a great question. Well, yeah, the term growth marketing is new for sure. And there's lots of ways, lots sort of tactic that you pursue to grow, particularly in a digital business. There's product led growth, there's marketing led growth, but for the most part, they're all um, attempts at improving metrics, right? Things like if you're in e-commerce, conversion rate, if you're in media, perhaps engagement rate or click-through rate, or the number of impressions you serve on your website that you can monetize. So the growth function is, I like to say, is sort of a game of inches at improving all the different metrics that power your unit economics and get you to maximum sort of profitability, right? Um, and why I think growth has become a thing is increasingly marketing has become more technical. And in many ways, product management has become much more influential in marketing. And so I think a lot of what growth marketing is that Venn diagram or intersection between designing a user experience that, you know, improves the sort of business KPIs and designing a marketing experience that does and then where those things intersect is really growth these days, right? Um, and things like brand or creative and have social maybe have sat out organic, what you call, has sat outside of growth. But I think of growth as that incredible sort of intellectually challenging intersection of how do you leverage um, your product to efficiently acquire customers, right? Or your user experience.
Yeah. So not thinking about when you're hiring for it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's obviously an obsession of mine. Let's say that we don't have the resume. Okay. We don't know that they have a ton of growth experience, and that's why you want to hire this person because they worked at some company that had great trajectory. Let's say we're only identifying by qualities of people who tend to be successful in this space. What qualities come to mind?
I look for people who are like, I can just tell they're curious, they're hungry, they have good energy. And by good energy, I don't mean like, oh, you seem like a nice person. I just mean they come with like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and like ready to like interact. And by the way, that could be a very quiet energy. That could be someone who's sort of soft-spoken and just thoughtful. But I do look for curiosity. I look for people who I can tell are ambitious. I always want to hire people who I can tell are just going to push themselves and don't need me to push them. Um, and who I can tell are going to show up every day ready to work. That's what I look for. And then depending on how senior a person you're hiring, you might look for different things in terms of leadership skills or, just range of experience, depths and breadth of experience. Obviously, the more senior you go, the more you expect there. But first and foremost, it's attitude, right? Yeah.
100% attitude over aptitude. You can train a lot. You
Yeah.
cannot necessarily get somebody to change their stripes in terms of what type of energy they bring to work, their mindset, their curiosity. Like those are things that are usually inherent in us by the time we get to the point where we're interviewing for roles at companies like the ones you work at. So let me ask you this: as a marketing executive, brand building is obviously also a big part of this, right? And it's key to your success. You've done it across many different industries and companies throughout your career. I want to understand your approach when you first get into a company. And I actually want to ask you about some of the ones that you've worked at previously, like Peloton. Like, what, obviously, you were drawn to the brand because you wanted to work there. What changed over time? What did you do when you got there? Maybe what changed about the brand over time while you were there? Or you can do it for ordering, whatever you think is kind of the best example. I tactically like to understand, though, walking into a brand, assessing a brand, and then helping either modify that brand, maintain that brand, whatever it may be.
Well, I'll tell you before I answer the Peloton or Aura of it all, I'll answer the first part of your question about kind of what do you do first when you start at a company, and how do you tackle the sort of onboarding phase of your job, those first 30 days, right? We all talk about the 30, 60, 90. When I joined Warner Media, my boss there was the CMO, a man named Michael Engelman, was a brilliant marketer, a brilliant CMO. And in our first one-on-one, he said to me, I don't want to hear any ideas. I don't want like you to come to any conclusion. Basically, I don't want to hear from you for the next 30 days. You have to go on a fact-finding mission. And he gave me a list of all the people that I needed to talk to, people who would be important to my success at the company. He gave me, these are all the people you need to talk to. Go talk to them, and then come back and talk to me. Nobody had ever done that to me before, and I was like, that's weird. I was almost, I wonder if he remembers this, but anyway, we'll have to share this podcast with him and get his
Oh, he's
thoughts. But
already a listener. We already know he's
oh, okay, Michael's already, yeah, he's heart, like all the emojis, but um, that was one of the best onboarding experiences I've ever had, because it was permission from him. It was more than permission. It was an instruction, but it was permission to take my time, to become informed, to not jump to any conclusions before I was ready, to go find my allies, the people who were going to help me, to go on a fact-finding mission about the different metrics that were going to impact, my various strategies. It was incredible. And what was amazing in the process is the list, I'm sure I went through the list that he gave me, but then those people told me to go talk to the next person and the next person. Before you knew it, in that first 30 days, I'd also just met so many people. This was at Warner Media. It was called Turner Broadcasting at the time, very big company. But because of that mission, I ended up just forging such incredible relationships. I had so many coffees. So by the time I was ready to get to work, I had all these people I could call. They knew who I was. We'd broken bread. It wasn't just that I was more informed going in. All of a sudden, I had allies. I had a head start from a relationship perspective. So that was the best onboarding I think I've ever
Well,
had.
one thing
And
I'll just
that,
add to that is that there's an underlying aspect of what he did there too that I think is really important. A lot of times, especially when you're hard charging, A-type personality,
yeah,
somebody who's had success in your career, you come in and in the first
yes,
30 days, you're probably trained to think, I got to get some wins. I got to show why they hired me. I've got to like make an impression. And he gave you permission, as you said, to not worry about that. We hired you. You're here. I need you to build a foundation, and then we can worry about that over time. So I think that was another really strong thing he did as a leader that I think probably gave you a lot of confidence.
it was mind-blowingly awesome. It really was. And it shaped how, to answer now the other part of your question, it really shaped how I go into every company going forward, which is I go in and it's all about, okay, just give me grace, give me time. But I promise that when I do start, I'm going to be so much faster because I have the benefit. I'm going to make less mistakes too, by the way, because I have the benefit of context, relationships, right? I have a shorthand now, with that. So it just, so I do, you go on the listening tour and you go meet people and You listen, you ask questions, and all of a sudden you start connecting the dots between, you start picking up on themes, you find your people, you know, it's a very powerful way to enter an organization. And if you can have managers who could give you the grace to do that, it's worth asking for it. Um, Peloton, I had a very clear assignment when I initially joined that company, which was to, rebuild the foundation of the digital subscription business, which at the time wasn't like a runaway hit in the same way that the hardware business was. And it was also like, go away, do the homework, do the research, talk to a lot of people, look at the data, don't talk, just go work, go think. And it was similar. I came back and pitched the company on a strategy that was a little bit controversial at the time, but it paid off. But it was paid off and it worked because I was so well informed. By the time I pitched my ideas, I had so much conviction because I'd done so much pre-work, So yeah.
Wait, so let me ask you a question. As somebody who uses a Peloton every now and then
Yeah.
and has
Yeah.
one in the house, so was that kind of like the advent of making the exercise leaders like celebrities and giving them personality and like getting more background on them, or like what was
No,
kind of the initiative there?
no. It was that business. So as you know, the Peloton's core business is you buy a piece of hardware and then you pay a connected fitness subscription.
Yep.
You unlock all the content, and that content streams from the tablet that's attached to the hardware. But then there's also a companion application which streams a lot of other content that is not tied to the hardware. So if you have a treadmill or a bike, right, you take classes on the tread and the bike, but you could also do yoga, you could do strength training, you could do meditation, you could do Pilates, you can do all sorts of other awesome workout. And there was always a question at Peloton of, should you offer that an app-only subscription at a lower price, or should you require ownership of the hardware to be part of the community? I think the answer now you see is well, let everybody in, right? And somebody might come in through yoga and buy a bike, right? Eventually, but there was a lot of strategy that went into designing that ecosystem, pricing that product, thinking through the content offering, the feature set. When I joined Peloton, it only had an Android and an iOS app. The television applications, like what when you stream content over your Apple TV or your Fire TV or your Roku, none of that existed. So it was about everything from enhancing the user experience, the feature set, pricing the product correctly, and enhancing the offering to bring in more consumers who maybe were still on the fence about hardware.
I'm gonna download that on my TV when I go home and check that out. I didn't even know that I was that familiar with that, but I want to learn more about that now. And I do a lot of
Oh, well,
meditation. Here we go. Ms.
yeah.
Guerrilla marketing right now. Come on the podcast. All the
Your
listeners right now.
Peloton subscription unlocks an unbelievable amount of amazing content.
I'm here for it. I appreciate that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about some of the unintentional or intentional marketing that we see out there, and some of the things that we've been hearing in the headlines over the last few months. There was companies like American Eagle that come to mind with the Sydney Sweeney campaign. There's the Coldplay concert with Astronomer CEO and his infidelity there with the head of HR, I believe, and what they did from a PR perspective. And I believe I read after that like sales took off for Astronomer even after the CEO left, and just the recognition of the brand. Same thing with American Eagle. There was a lot of controversy around that and people reading between the lines, but feels like American Eagle hadn't been relevant for a while until that campaign, and it sounds like their sales took off after that. How do you looking at that good PR, bad PR, do you subscribe to the belief that like there's no such thing as bad PR? And have you been at a company where something like that came up, and were you part of the process of kind of, figuring that out or working
Oh,
on that?
yeah, I mean, certainly, everybody who's followed the Peloton, the Peloton wife, do you remember that?
The one with the girl, like the video where she was like, I think it was during COVID. Is that what you're talking about?
No, even before that, well, that was another one. Well, there was a few Peloton moments that were, there was a bit of a kind of PR moment where we had to, fall into, I hate calling it crisis management, but,
So
there's
what, can you remind us what happened, like very briefly? You don't think
yeah, there was an ad that sort of that was called the Peloton wife was what people called it in the press, but it was a spot that just where many viewers interpreted the campaign as, it was a holiday campaign, and in the spot, a husband gifts his wife a Peloton, and there were a number of people who sort of said, she's already skinny, why is he giving her an exercise equipment? Men should, what is he trying? There's sort of there was a concern that it played on all sorts of tropes and, that whatever. And that in the ad, her, she was initially a little intimidated about getting on the bike, and then she fell in love with it. And people said she was scared and mouthy. And she didn't come across as a strong woman, her husband, just whatever. It was, people read into it. Yes, people read into it. And I think there was a bit of reading into maybe the Sydney swing spot. But people turned it into, right, everybody we all come with our own sort of biases and opinions and so how we interpret content, how we interpret advertising. Yeah, sometimes it can blow back in
I'd
our
love to
brain.
be outraged sometimes, I feel like. And I think it's
Yeah.
changed a little bit. But, think about like the Lexus ads where like the husband buys the wife the Lexus and she goes outside. Well, she's got 2 legs. You didn't need to buy her that car. That Peloton ad sounds like something. I think that happened in my house at Christmas one year in terms of buying it. And I don't know, it had all the mousiness and all that stuff. But like sometimes it's a gift. And sometimes, somebody wants to exercise and, the Peloton is the impetus or the motivation to do that. That's funny. So you guys, I'm sure, can you tell us, like, I'm sure notoriety and sales, did they spike?
Yeah, I don't recall us measuring a significant dip in sales. The people who were angry at it were probably not the people who were shopping for Pelotons anyway. But yeah, we were embroiled in a lot of conversations we didn't want to be embroiled in, and those conversations didn't reflect our values about what a Peloton was and what gifting a Peloton really meant. And, that wasn't what we wanted to communicate with that commercial and something else, and sort of the media ran with something that felt like it didn't represent us. And I think that happens sometimes, right? There was a great art. There's a guy named Mark Ritson who's super brilliant marketer. He writes a column in Adweek. He also runs a program called the Mini NBA. He wrote a column on this in Adweek where he sort of talked about this idea of this was in context of the Sydney Sweeney American
Eagle.
issue, where sometimes you have to look at the intent of the brand, right? Like, there's no way American Eagle. It's highly unlikely anyone sat around a table and said, we want to communicate something about eugenics, right?
Sometimes
Advertising.
you have to look at the intent of the person and of everything.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know how you can't bifurcate those two things. It's like, okay, maybe you stumbled on that, or you're a little bit, you didn't really like think this all the way through. But at the same time, do I think your intent was malicious or that you were trying to play into tropes? No. And
And this wasn't, and I think where the conversation gets interesting and where it is important to reflect and be better is that, look, no marketer wants to be embroiled in a scandal or be told that their campaigns hurt people or offend people or have these sort of biases and but I do think that and by the way, even when the Peloton wife thing happened, like, that spot tested really well. We also do a lot of research, right?
sure.
Before we spend millions and millions of dollars on something, we often test it with consumers, and they say I think this is like this or like that or whatever. There's an opportunity to reflect on the risk a certain communication might have in the market. And so when you sit around the table, you make a bet, hopefully it's informed by data, you test your thesis, and it still fails, you got to go back and say, where did we fail? And I think sometimes the failure is, maybe you didn't have all the right sugar on the table. One of the most brilliant business arguments around diversity in leadership is that when we are all different sitting around the table, you kind of de-risk having blind spots, right?
It's important
Like,
through diversity and inclusion,
that's
right?
right.
If you reflect your customers, then you're going to catch more things like that and be smarter about things like that, right?
That's right. It's easier to catch things early if the people sitting around the table, um, have
Yeah, the
very
perspectives of the
perspective.
broader population,
Right,
for sure.
right. And I don't know anything about the team. This is not a comment on American Eagle. To be clear, I'm just saying that in general, there are lots of opportunities for teams to mitigate the risk of this type of stuff happening. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just gonna happen, and you gotta roll with the
That's just
punches. And
life,
to
huh?
your question of is do I believe that no PR is bad PR? No, I think there's probably some things that you know you definitely aren't like you don't come out on the other end, or like the people in the Coldplay. You mentioned Coldplay. Those are lives that were
100%.
well, those people really suffered. I read a piece, I don't remember where it was, where it covered the woman who with the HR, she took a death threat. I don't so they're like, I don't know if that was good or bad for the company and their business, and they sold more
I think that I remember they did like a Gwyneth Paltrow ad after that, and it was
yeah,
pretty cleverly done and pretty tongue in cheek. But to your
they're
point, like there was fallout there. There was like people's lives that were ruined, and it was
yeah.
a really unfortunate situation. So, did they handle the unfortunate situation to the benefit of the shareholder value? I guess, but there was like people impacted by that, right? So, I guess what you in those situations, you do your best to make lemons out of lemonade,
Yeah.
and do what you can. So,
Well,
um,
sometimes what I think was great about American Eagle is you don't say anything.
you don't
It's
say
just
anything. You just keep
just
let it
but,
blow over, which you
political,
did.
yeah.
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 Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
Got to talk about hiring because that's what pays the bills here at the whole Higher Learning podcast. So let's talk about it. You built some marketing teams throughout your career, great organizations. Let's start here. Do you have a core hiring philosophy that you adhere to when you're building your team?
Yeah, there are a couple things that are really important to me. One is I really look for people who are, do not have redundant capabilities. I don't want a mini me or maxi me or whatever. I really do look for people who can complement my skills. I don't love just, it's so powerful and valuable when you have people who push you and who you can learn from. I don't care how many years experience you have. You're always learning. By the way, especially when you work in tech, things are always changing, right? There's like at 0 point in your career can you stop learning. Like
Real,
it's
real.
just yeah. So I always look for people who can teach me things, who can challenge me at every level. I look for people who can complement me and cover for my skill gaps. I'm not great at everything. So I love that. I love when I bring people and they have such unique experiences, unique perspectives where they're experts in something that I'm not great at. I look for that. I also, like we talked about at the top of the call, look for ambition. I like really ambitious people who just like, it's to me you're like competitive and you have sharp elbows or whatever. But, people who like really care about the quality of their work, the trajectory of their careers, people who are proud about their work, man, that is something I look
We
for.
call it the gas meter here at MSH. We love our acronyms. They give a shit, right? If you give a shit, you care, like that's important. That's really, we want people who care about their work, that care about their team members, they care about the quality of what they're doing. So that's something that we're always trying to measure at our company. When you interview, or have you had memorable interviews that you think back throughout your career? Maybe you were interviewing or you were interviewing somebody else. Any come to mind when I ask you that?
Yeah. Gosh. So there's so many. There's so many. It's such, and you put two strangers on the phone anytime to talk about anything.
You're gonna get some wild outcomes every now and then.
Every now and
Sometimes it's
then you're gonna,
perfect. Sometimes and most of the time it's there could be
yeah,
some differences and silliness.
totally. Every now and then you're gonna be a wild ride, wild ride. I remember one instance very early in my career that, and I'm talking about like 20 plus years ago. I remember I was working in-house in marketing, and I was curious about making a switch agency side. And I was taking a lot of informational interviews with people I respected or was connected to, and I was doing a bit of networking to figure out if the switch from in-house to agency, uh, you know, was right for me. And someone I knew introduced me to a very senior executive at a very hot agency, like the agency that was like winning all the business and all the awards and in all the ad trades. And it was a big deal for me to get this opportunity to talk to this person. And I went, this is when we physically went places still. And you wasn't, you didn't get on the Zoom with it. And, I waited in the lobby, and, he was running late, and then I got into the office, and all the awards are on the wall. And this person couldn't have been more cruel and mean to me. And keep in mind, I was like in my 20s, and this person was several decades my senior. And was just mean. I think I don't know, why. Maybe he was having a bad day, or maybe he was annoyed that he had to take the meeting in the first place, or maybe he was just that kind of person. But I remember that very clearly, that experience. And and since then, because now I'm closer to his age, and I do get a lot of young people who reach out to me on LinkedIn, or former colleagues who have older kids and say, "Oh, my kid just graduated. Can you just, they want to do marketing. Can you?" And I have to say that, like, if I feel like I can't be awesome, will say no. And I think it's important that if, like, mentoring young people, getting them excited, helping them find the right careers, helping them succeed. And by the way, in incredibly uncertain times when the job market is so volatile,
For sure.
being AI and tariffs and this and that, and they just spent whatever, 400 grand on a private college or something, and they're looking to work pretty much for free because, that's what's out there. I think we've got to do better by our young people. And I remember
That
that.
experience informed you, and it's led
Yeah.
to you wanting to do things differently, viewing it differently, paying it forward.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really, really, as much as it doesn't sound as though, you got to thank that guy to a degree, because it gave you some perspective that you might not otherwise have. Not that I think you
Oh,
were probably going to be mean or cruel, but it gave you an idea of, how we can put our hand down as we go up the ladder and help other people come up with us, particularly those, like you said, early in career who, gosh, I don't envy that. There's a ton going on there right now. And so I'm really
100%.
hopeful that things start to evolve for the better there. Do you have a favorite question that you like to ask in interviews? One that really is kind of, you feel like gets to the heart of a matter or helps you understand somebody?
There isn't a single question that I ask, but I do always ask for, like, give me an example, or actually, I take that back. I sometimes will try, depending on the vibe. Sometimes I do try to brainstorm. Like, I try to simulate a brainstorm. Oh, tell me about, like, give me an example of a problem you solved, how you solved it. Oh, what if this happened? Or what if that happened? And I start to sort of build out some hypotheticals. Or, oh, well, show me. Can you show me the thing? Let's go look at it. Oh, how did you do? And I try to start to kind of riff a little bit and see how people collaborate and think on the spot.
React, respond. Do you get them up on the whiteboard and have them draw things
Oh,
down? Something like that?
whiteboard, but like, oh, well, like, let's pull up an example. Let's go to the website. Let's look at it. What do you think of that? Like, and I try to to simulate what would it be like to brainstorm with this person? What would it be like to it's less about having right or wrong answers. It's more to see how creative a person is. How do they think on their feet?
What are they going to be
How
like to
they,
work with, right? Like you're putting them in
yeah,
scenarios that are very likely to happen once you're actually working together, and you can get a sense of who they are and how they approach things.
yeah, yeah. But usually that happens later in an interview process. It
You're
won't
not doing that
necessarily.
in the first interview, the first
Not
screening.
really,
Yeah,
but
makes
but
sense.
eventually I will want to start to okay, let's play. Let's
Let's get into it. Let's find
yeah,
out what it's going to be. I like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do you get people to understand what it's like to work with you or for you? Like, do you do that in the interview process, or is that something they find out day one?
No, no, I usually say if they don't ask me, if I ask, "What do you have any questions?" and they don't ask, "What's your style?" or whatever, I will usually come out and say, "Hey, I want you to know here's how I like to work. Here's my process. Here's a little bit about my character. I just want you to know up front that's what it's going to be like." Cool. Is that gonna, is that gonna work for you? I do try to tell people also about the culture, the state of affairs, here's what you're about to walk into. Here's some of the challenges you're gonna face early on. Here's how I'm thinking, about solving these challenges together. Here's the kind of support you're gonna get. I do like to be really upfront. There's nothing worse than stepping into a gig and it not being what you expected.
Happens all the time too. I mean, it's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
it's
People go through the process, they take a job, and then they find out 2 weeks in, this is not what I signed up for. And you're
100%.
usually kind of stuck in those situations a lot of the time. So yeah, I totally agree with you. That's why I think it's important to give a realistic job preview of not just the job and the organization, but you and your style and what you like as much as you can in the interview, right? To give people the full picture. I want to make sure we have time to talk about AI. So I want to ask
Yeah.
you, what can you tell me about where you're seeing AI in marketing right now, and kind of what your approach is to this very uncertain world of this new technology and innovation that's changing everything on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Um, look, there's, we use AI, and I've been using AI even prior to Sundays because I've only been at Sundays for Dogs for 2 months. And by the way, Napster has pivoted to essentially an all AI company that makes only AI products. And so, as a user and a fan of AI for a lot of things, and someone who thinks marketing is one of those disciplines that can definitely be enhanced by AI, I also, like anybody, if you went to Cannes, for example, last summer, every roundtable was a conversation about the risk to creativity and humanity and job. Um, right now, if, most AI work is really slop. It still is. The amount of human intervention that still is required to make something awesome is still pretty significant. So I don't think it's any different than using other software that you use to help you get to get to a final result. You still have to use it.
For sure.
Right. What do you say in AI? It's like garbage in, garbage out, right?
100%.
You know, um, the promise is that eventually we'll be able to just utter the words and the thing will show up and we'll see what happens there. But right now there's so much intervention. You still have to, I like to say that a prompt in AI is not much different than just a good brief. When you write in marketing, what do? We just write briefs all the time. You have to brief the AI.
You're only as good as the prompts you can make, or how it's still,
Yeah.
the human intervention still really matters to get the right
Yeah.
output. There's no question.
Yes. Yes.
There's still a
Yes.
contextual gap too that I don't know if that gets solved anytime in the near future. I mean, there's certain things that we have in our head that it's really hard to get into a computer, right? And you'll get into a large language model and get the output that we want. And even if you can, articulating it the right way is a humongous skill that not everybody has. So I think that's part of what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I also, I think we are still consumers, I think, are still gonna expect to see things that move them or that have soul. You know, would AI have come up with absolute Keith Haring? I
Yeah.
don't.
We don't know.
Well,
Not
yeah,
today, not today's version of it. I can say that.
yeah, right? So we're still far from that creating that kind of level of work, but it is certainly cheaper and faster to make things, and I think that's great, and I use AI as a companion all the time, particularly for copywriting, because I actually really like to write, and I find that AI actually is an amazing editor. I'm always putting things in and say, "Can you make this punchier? Can you give me 10 versions of this?" And I it's fun to riff with it, so
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a big reckoning right now. I did a panel last week where I was facilitating, and I had a bunch of really, top level executives on the panel, and when it was a media conference, and so we were talking about how AI's impact on media and production and streaming in Hollywood and all the different things that are coming up right now. From where does the line draw in terms of AI talent versus AI writing versus AI CGI, like assistive AI versus generative AI, and there's a lot of things that are still being fleshed out and figured out. And then targeting of ads and revenue and to bring it back to from a marketing perspective, like it's certainly going to change the game in a lot of ways, but I think it's also going to lead to more abundance in the space. And we'll have to see. I mean, I think creativity is a very unique and innately human thing, and so how that continues to evolve over time, I think is going to be really interesting. And
yeah, when I was when I was at Napster, when we were launching one of our products, which is a consumer-facing AI, video-based AI tool. So instead of like text-based prompts, the interaction with the AI is the way you and I are looking at each other right now through real-time video conversation, where the AI is embodied, human embodied, figure,
avatar,
not
yeah,
not a chat, a text prompt, right? Um, and we were naming that product, and we were really intentional. We named that product Napster Companion. And the reason we named it a companion, and like there was some talk like, oh, it sounds a little sexy, a companion, and that's obviously not the intention. The intention is to communicate that the AI is a partner, the AI an aid, the AI is to help,
co-pilot,
is
augment, not replace.
not replace. Yeah. And there's lots of great names like that, like Copilot is a good one. Where I think when you create products that are there to enhance our capabilities, make us more powerful and not replace us, obviously that's awesome. But,
100%.
let's see where we land.
We'll
Yeah.
see where it goes. It'll be exciting times one way or another.
I mean, you listen to Elon Musk, and I think sounds a little different.
Yeah, I mean, but they have incentive, they have agenda to talk at that level and that extreme. So we just got to see. We're gonna have to see how it plays out. All right, last question for me. If you had to give your 20-year-old self advice that you didn't know then, but that you know now, what would you be? What would it be?
Oh gosh, I would tell myself to be less afraid. I was a little bit massier early in my career, you know, kind of a good girl, don't talk back, don't whatever. Not to say that, you shouldn't be a chain of command isn't important and you shouldn't have respect and deference, particularly for people who are more senior to you. But I think I didn't stand up for myself as much as I should have, and I would tell myself to be a little have a little bit more.
Who
Yeah.
knows what you would have said to that executive at the agency had
I
you
know,
given yourself
I
that
would've
advice, huh?
yeah, I know. I
Good
would I
story.
would go yeah, it's the adult me. I wish I could go back there
Go
and,
back
yeah,
in time. Go get them. I love
tell
that.
that guy what's what.
Karina, it's been amazing. We've covered a
Yeah,
lot of topics. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm
yeah,
looking forward to spending time in person in the near future. Next time I'm
yes,
up in the New Jersey, New York area. Thanks for coming
yes.
on.
Thanks for having me.
I
It's been awesome.
appreciate it. Talk to you later.